Welcome to this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, the first podcast dedicated to helping civil engineering professionals succeed in work and life. I'm your host, James Taylor, and in this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, I'll be talking with Matt Aston, president at GPRS, about ground-penetrating radar services, including its applications in concrete scanning, utility locating, video pipe inspection, leak detection, and laser scanning services. It's now time for our civil engineering conversation of the week with Matt Aston. Matt, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thanks, James. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Before we dive into the technicalities of ground penetrating radar services, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to start a company specializing in concrete scanning, utility locating, and related services?
Yeah, so that was not the goal. Going through college, I went to college for my degrees in finance. I thought that I wanted to, work in a tall building in New York or Boston or Chicago at some point, and things changed along the way. I started out. I had a corporate finance job as an investment analyst for a large company here in Toledo, Ohio, where I'm from. But life changes, and my wife was a teacher. She called me at work one day, said she was pregnant, and we'd only been married a couple of years. I was still pretty young. I was 24, and I talked to my dad. I realized that the corporate life was not for me, so I talked to my dad about going into business with him. When I was about 3 years old, he started a concrete cutting company. So concrete cutting, core drilling. And we went out to lunch and talked about me going into business with him. And about a week later, he came back to me and said, "Hey, I really think you should do something on your own." And in that conversation, he gave me this magazine. And the magazine was Concrete Openings. It's an industry publication. And there was an advertisement for a company called Geophysical Survey Systems out of New Hampshire. They were advertising this ground penetrating radar. And one of the applications they identified in this advertisement was helping the construction industry find electrical conduits in the path of saw cutting. And I knew from having helped on my dad's projects through high school and college, it just seemed inevitable that if there was a trench laid out where concrete was going to be cut, electrical was probably going to be in that
Right.
In that trench at some point, and they were going to shut something down. So that was really the basis for starting GPRS, with that kind of singular application in mind.
So went from corporate, or didn't want to be in the corporate world, to creating your own business, and you've grown that obviously over time, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for those that don't know, can you talk a little bit about video pipe inspection, how that works, and in what scenarios it's most useful?
Yeah, so that's one of the applications we've gotten into, one of the service lines, I should say, we've gotten into a little more recently. So what we primarily use video pipe inspection for is to look inside sewers. And with the increasing prevalence of directional boring, there is an increasing problem in sewer systems where sewers are bored through without anyone really ever knowing about it. And it can lead to real problems. So we'll use, not only for inspection of the quality of the pipe or the material on the inside of the sewer system, it also assists with locating the pipe itself, but also to look for cross bores before those cross bores lead to further problems like potential collapse or sinkholes that could result as a result of the pipe being compromised.
So that's one of the things you guys do. I know for myself, been utilizing video pipe inspection a lot more, especially on redevelopment projects, and seeing that, hey, we really need to know more about our infrastructure that's around us besides just, here's the size of the pipe and here's the inverts that we might get from a typical survey. It kind of dives into that a lot further of getting a condition of what's that pipe look like. Is it in good shape? Are we going to run into issues a couple years down the line where it might actually be failing? That's something that I've seen of how that video pipe inspection services works out pretty well.
That's it. I mean, that's we've got video pipe inspection available in about 30 cities, throughout the country, and yeah, it's hugely important as we look at this aging infrastructure problem that we hear so much about.
Yeah.
That's a real issue that, if left unattended to, it can create some real problems that are unforeseen and extremely costly.
So you talk about that's one service that you guys provide. Let's talk about something else, leak detection related to infrastructure, and that's kind of a crucial piece as well. Can you explain the technology behind it and how GPRS improves upon traditional methods?
Sure. So the method we use is acoustic, and I would say this is as much art as it is science. So we have a process where we listen. We clamp onto the pipe, and we listen for flow through, and then we've got very good at determining where pipes are leaking, and we are seeing really across the country, again, this aging infrastructure problem. Look at some of these older cities and the water systems, and there is a shocking amount of water loss, not just within municipalities, but even within private facilities. As we look at manufacturing plants or universities, hospitals, some of these critical facilities, and there is we've been shocked. We've been into leak detection for about 3 years now, and we are shocked at what we've seen. Just the magnitude of some of the water loss going on, really all throughout the country. This has been a huge problem that we're helping to solve now.
Is water the biggest one? I'm guessing water is the biggest one that you guys are looking at for leak detection.
It's all we do. Yeah, it's the only leak. We don't perform any gas leak detection surveys. We are, as far as leak detection is concerned, we are entirely focused on water.
Laser scanning services are also becoming increasingly popular. How does this technology benefit your clients?
So we got into laser scanning just a few years ago. I actually founded a company called TruePoint Laser Scanning, co-founded, I should say,
Okay.
Years ago in 2014 and 2022. We bought GPRS bought TruePoint Laser Scanning. I had given up my ownership. A good friend of mine that he built the company and grew it. And we just recognized an opportunity to really bring the services together where, so TruePoint Laser Scanning uses LiDAR, which gives precise measurement with using laser technology, using point clouds to create three-dimensional views of very complex space. And think mechanical rooms, think refineries, really any space where it doesn't even need to be complex, but even for just general building purposes. And laser scanning, it can give very precise measurements. Millions of points can be collected in just a short amount of time. And what we thought about was integrating laser services to map everything that we can see with our traditional ground penetrating radar, kind of the core service of GPRS. So we have been focused on mapping the underground and then integrating it with this LiDAR technology to create another dimension of a point cloud, where instead of just having everything that you can see, we could integrate the GPR findings from below the surface or behind the wall into that point cloud, because the laser will pick up whatever marks we make on the surface. And then we can use the technology within the software to build in our findings from underground as well. So it just creates a whole new level of reporting and sophistication for BIM programs that can give a more complete picture of what you might find by using only laser.
So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about some of these other services. Let's talk about ground penetrating radar services as a whole. What are they? How are they integral to construction and utility management? Because that's probably your bread and butter of what you guys do.
It is the core of our business, yeah. So GPRS, this year we'll do about 160 million in revenue, and about 80% of our business comes from ground penetrating radar services. The other service lines, laser, leak, and video pipe inspection, those are newer in the last 3 or 4 years, but we have built this business on our expertise with ground penetrating radar. And I would say that there's really two separate, I would say, focuses within GPR services. The first is within concrete applications, then the second is underground. And where we really started within concrete, I already mentioned talking about finding electrical services within a slab prior to saw cutting or core drilling. But we can also use it. One of our main applications now is laying out the exact placement of reinforcing steel within a concrete slab. So if you had rebar that was placed on an 8-inch grid, we could easily have you drill a 6-inch hole through that deck without touching any steel at all. We could also use it to find voids that are just below the surface for concrete applications. And then on the underground side, really our focus is utilities. The vast majority of our underground applications business comes from finding underground utilities prior to an excavation. But there's also some other applications, voids, finding underground storage tanks. Those are some of the other applications that we use with GPR. But that is the core of our business.
Yeah, I know for myself, as a civil engineer, we've been using more of the GPRS, especially with our redevelopment projects, because you really need to know what's going on underneath the surface. You can't just say, oh, we think there's a storm drain there. There's just so much out there on these sites that you're not aware of. There's usually very poor historical data for what these things were. And we found that while not perfect, the GPR does help with identifying some of those risks up front.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, James. So we will never tell you. We will eliminate your risk when it comes to what's underground. But through the use of the technology that we bring, and now multiple technologies that we bring, we can absolutely minimize the risk that anyone takes on when they're breaking ground or excavating, cutting through concrete. We can never eliminate, but we can absolutely minimize those risks.
So let's switch away from the business side of things, shifting to the business side of things. Share a little bit about the origin story of GPRS. I think you talked a little bit about that, but you grew that from a one-person thing, got kicked out by your father, it sounded like, and created your own thing, and then you're now a company with 800 employees.
Yeah, just shy of 800 people now. We've been extremely blessed. It all starts with the team, right? So I was fortunate. I did things a little differently. I hired my friends. I hired people I knew and that I thought I could trust, and that served me and the company extremely well. I'd say one of the other areas that we were fortunate is where we started. We started in Toledo, Ohio, not a huge city, about a 500,000 people in the metro area. So I realized early on that if this business was going to grow, I was going to have to look outside of Toledo. And Detroit's only 45 minutes north. It's 10 times the size of Toledo. And I was able to build up some more traction in that area quickly. I was able to start staying busy. And I found myself driving up to Detroit and Ann Arbor almost every day. And I hired first employee. His name's John Kessinger. I'm proud to say he's still with GPRS today. He's just done a tremendous job for GPRS. And this is in 2002. And he built us a website. And before Google was really well known, a household name, there was this service, this pay-per-click service for internet search called Overture.com. And John built this website, and we found about this pay-per-click service and started paying for clicks to help promote the website. We were paying like 15 cents for a ground penetrating. If someone searched ground penetrating radar on Yahoo back in 2002, if they clicked our site through this sponsored search, we'd owe Overture 15 cents. And we started getting calls from all around the country, and it was crazy. And yeah, we were early to mid 20s, and you know, why is this happening? Why do we keep getting calls from all over the United States?
Mm-hmm.
And it just realized if they had someone local that they could find to do this, they would. So what we need to do is we need to start putting people in different cities all over the U.S. I was at a job in near West Palm Beach, Florida, and was looking for a place to eat dinner one night. And I'm driving down A1A, and I saw crane after crane after crane, and every building was concrete construction. I saw the post tension tendons out hanging outside the end of the buildings, and this is ridiculous. We need to have someone here, and we need to put someone in every major market, throughout the U.S. So I developed a plan to. I would take myself out of the field. I was going to focus on growing the business. At the time, we had a few employees in 3 or 4 cities, and we're now in 54 markets across the U.S. We've got about 450 people in the field, and almost 800 people in the company now.
Well, congratulations on that success. That's obviously a huge thing. You mentioned the 54 cities across the U.S. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but you had a different strategy when you first started. To obviously, there's a strategy now. So, in what ways has the company's growth strategy changed as it has scaled up?
My strategy, I don't know if it was really this really complex strategy, but it was, hey, let's go build our footprint. Let's go get this in every city we can. Before we worried about establishing depth in any one market, our strategy was let's go wide. We'll go wide, and then as the demand grows in these cities, we'll add depth as we need to. And so we only had one person in New York City when we were looking to expand to Boston. We only had one person in Chicago when we were looking to expand to Milwaukee or Indianapolis. So from probably 2000, I would say we started our national expansion effort in about 2006 or 7. And up until about 2013, we only had a handful of cities with more than one person serving the industry. But now we've got a few markets where we have 30 plus project managers in out there every single day serving. So Southern California is our biggest market. Philadelphia is a huge market for us. Northern California, Seattle. I would say largely it correlates with population, where the bigger the city, the more people we have there.
Right.
But it makes sense if you look at where construction dollars are spent. Generally, larger population centers would stand to reason that more dollars are going to be spent in those areas.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Can you tell us a little bit about your new initiative, Sitemap, and what are its goals? What sets it apart from other services in the market?
So you touched on it earlier. You almost took the words out of my mouth.
Oh no, that was not intentional.
I believe you said something to the effect of, rarely do you find reliable records of what's underground, and we find that to be the case. Over the last 20 plus years, we've realized, we work at a lot of the same facilities over and over and over again. And we were at a strategy planning session a few years ago, and how can we really add more value to our customer base? What can we do we have this saying within our company called widen the gap. We believe that we've built a considerable gap between the services that we perform and others that perform the same. So what can we do to widen that gap? And Sitemap is really what came out of that meeting. And so everybody uses Google Maps or something similar to get from point A to point B. So we thought, okay, what could we do to create something like a Google Maps for facilities? So think about big campuses. think about universities, think about hospitals, manufacturing facilities, entertainment venues. We could even extend this to municipalities. We could extend this to the utilities themselves with their network of infrastructure. And most of these facilities that we work on, there are some exceptions, but most facilities that we work on have very outdated records. It's rare that they have an accurate set of plans that are consolidated with all utilities together. We often see, water and sewer on one set of plans, gas on another set. We see electric.
Yep.
Then is everything that's on those plans accurate? Is everything, was everything built as it was called out on those plans? Have changes that have taken place over time been updated on those plans? I believe that many of these facilities have a 30-year employee who has knowledge of infrastructure that's present underground that's not, there is no record of
that historical piece of one day we put something in here at some point in time.
Right. So what we want to do with Sitemap is we want to bring all this together to create that Google Maps for underground infrastructure for these facilities, for these campuses, where we can show that consolidated view of what their infrastructure looks like at their site, on their campus. And at any time, they can go in and they can see everything that we've ever done on that campus, all of our findings, when it was updated. So this gas line, it's 32 inches deep, and it was marked by Matt Aston on November 27th, 2023. And the future state of this, we want to bring augmented reality into the picture where they can open up our GPRS app, hover over the ground, and see what utilities are present below, walk that line, and trace it out, from origin to destination.
That sounds really cool, and something I'm sure you're going to see some success with as it continues to go out there into the market. Because, like I said, I did almost take the words right out of your mouth. Right? There's not stuff available, and usually it's all in different places. And something that can bring that together would be something that's probably very, very beneficial.
Yeah, we see it as the game changer within our line of work. Yeah, and then you talk about incorporating the other services like video pipe inspection and being able to have records of when the sewer was last inspected. We can incorporate point clouds into this and put BIM models into Sitemap. In the future, we'll do the same thing inside buildings as well. So it's not just underground infrastructure, but what does the infrastructure look like within a mechanical room? What does the infrastructure look like under slab or behind walls within some of these buildings as well?
Coming and meeting the needs of those that have this exact thing.
Yeah, we've tried to anticipate the need. So we don't see a ton of the asking for this yet, but if you go back a few years, we didn't think that we would be ordering our groceries online and
right.
showing up at our house, within a few hours. And so we're trying to be on that leading edge and anticipate the needs of, hey, how can we make this better? How can we be on that leading edge? What can we be doing to advance this service within this industry to create more value for the construction community, for the facilities community, for the engineering community? That's really where we want to be.
So it's definitely a little bit of a different a take on the field and something a little bit unique. But for someone that might be interested in this type of work, what advice would you give, and how can they prepare for a career in GPR services?
Yeah, thank you. We our philosophy on people is, I don't want to say that we don't care what your background is. We do care, but it doesn't really matter to us where you come from. Our philosophy on hiring is, we hire character And then we know if we have the right character, we can teach the skill. So if you look at my background is finance. I'm leading I shouldn't say my background. My education is in finance. My background's in GPRS now. I started it when I was 24 years old. But that holds true. I'd say as we've grown over these last 20 years, I'm proud that our culture has not changed. Our culture is we want to be the biggest small company that we can be. We don't want bureaucracy. We don't want red tape. We don't want policy for the sake of policy. We promote based on who shows a desire for more and shows a capacity to be able to handle more than what they currently have. And that has served us well. If you look at our leadership team, it does vary. We've got people all throughout the company. We've got people that came through trades. We have people that came through engineering. We also have people that came through. They were teachers before they came to GPRS. We have people that were in law enforcement that came to GPRS. We've got a lot of people that came from the military now work for GPRS. So backgrounds vary, but we know that if we get the right people on the team, we can teach the skill and teach them to be elite in whatever their area of responsibility is.
That's great stuff. I love it. It's about the culture, not necessarily about where you've been or what you know. It's about being the right people and the right making the right fit. And
that's it.
That's always the important thing. All right, now it's time for our CE Hot Seat segment of the week with Matt Aston. All right, welcome to the CE Hot Seat. Matt, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, Matt, do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning ritual, lunchtime ritual, things that you do consistently on a daily basis that contribute to being a successful professional?
2 things in the morning. Start every day with a workout. It just helps me to get focused, helps me to be ready for the day, to get in that right mindset as I go into the office. And started a few years ago. As I'm driving into the office, I shut the radio off and just take that time to pray. And that's I know there's 15 or 20 minutes in the morning that I have with no distractions, just quiet time. And so that's how I started choosing to use that time a few years ago, was to just open up in prayer on the way to the office. And that has that's been a game changer for me personally.
What is one book that you recommend to engineers regularly, or just one book that you have found to be extremely helpful in your professional and personal development?
So the best book that I've read, and this is not just for engineers, but I think this is for anybody in leadership, anyone in business, and it's called How the Mighty Fall. I think a lot of people have read the book Good to Great. And if you have, a lot of those companies that were featured in Good to Great, they didn't stay great very long. A few of them are no longer in existence. And if they are, they're a fraction of what they were when that book was written. So How the Mighty Fall is a follow-up to Good to Great. It's by Jim Collins. And he tracks these 5 stages of decline, for these once great companies and what happened to them. And I remember reading that, and I know I didn't put it down. I read it from start to finish, and it was almost like watching a terrifying movie where, oh my gosh, I can see how you could fall into this trap. And it was the most powerful book that I've read.
I'll need to add that to my list. That sounds like a great book. Thinking back on your managers of the past, picture your favorite manager or managers and what made them your favorite.
So I'm a little unique. I've only technically had 2 managers in my life, but I've had a few tremendous mentors, and none more so than my father. I was, like I mentioned, I was 24 years old when I started GPRS. really a pup, very, very green. And my dad was a seasoned business owner. He gave me the loan to get the company started. We were 50-50 partners until I paid him back. And one of the best things that he did for me in those early years was he was very willing to let me trip and fall on my own. And if I went to him for advice, he would be happy to give it and help in any way he could. But if I didn't go to him for advice, he would let me walk right into a trap, then know that I would probably come to him for advice as I was looking for a way to climb out of that mess that I got into. And I'm so grateful. Grateful to him for many reasons. Just a tremendous example, and helping me start GPRS to begin with, and seeing something in me that I probably did not see in myself at that time. But managers, I had two. They were both solid, but nobody holds a candle to what my dad has done for me.
Yeah, and usually the family is kind of the one that takes that preference or that top spot when you can. I thought you'd have a little bit of a unique answer on that one, and you definitely did. And it's great to hear that story about your dad and all that he instilled into you and really pushed you. Yeah. I've got one final question that is critical. That is the critical engineering career elevator advice question. That's a tongue twister. If you got into an elevator with a civil engineering student and had about 30 to 40 seconds with them, some career advice, what would that advice be?
Don't stay in a job that you don't love. I think that's it for anybody. If you're not doing something that you love doing, either find a path within that company to move into something that you think that you will love, or find a different place to work. If you don't love what you're doing, you're never going to be elite. You're never going to be able to do something at a really high level unless you really love what you're doing. And I think that not just for engineering, for anyone who has some aspirations, for leadership or for excellence in what they do.
I love it. That's a great piece of advice. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can our listeners connect with you or learn more about GPRS?
So I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn. Just search Matt Aston, Aston, and GPRS. You'll find me easily. Our website is GPRSinc.com. So GPRSinc.com.
Please remember you can find the show notes for this episode at civilengineeringpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your civil engineering endeavors.